Hi there, this is Zara Andrews, and we're going to be continuing my video from previously when we were doing some research and looking at how accurate Ciels' names were. In this video, I'm just going to basically take a deeper dive and look at the historical accuracy of the name Ciel. For this part, I've gathered information of the earls that lived in the 1800s using Wikitree and Wikipedia. I found Wikitree really helpful. I've never used it before. It was fantastic. It does, I have to admit though, it's not 100% accurate, basically. It's not at all 100% accurate. I mean, there's a CL Phantom Hive family tree on it, which I randomly found. Obviously someone who was a fan did that, and they say that CL's got 2 kids with Elizabeth, but they haven't added the other CL on. So for this, I've basically looked into the information of where the earls were born, when they gained the earldom, when they died, their relation to their predecessor, if they were a second son, the number of children they had, how many daughters, how many sons, and if their name was a family name. What was quite helpful to get the birth years, because then I can kind of work out what age they are. Well, I can also work out if it's in the 1800s. I can also, like, if with the death years, I can then work out when the next earl came to be an earl, and I can work out everything like that and just keep connecting them. Because sometimes you don't fully know who's become the next earl, and you can't find the information for them, but it might be on Wikipedia, but they just haven't linked it properly, and it's just a nightmare. There was an earl that they said a distant relative and then got the earldom after them, but it turned out it was actually just their brother, and I don't know why, and it just made it all fucking difficult. So the birth year, when they gained the earldom, and when they died are just kind of stuff that really helped me to research them. Basically, the next thing I looked up was their relation to their predecessor. I found that 61% of them were the son of their predecessor. I mean, it's a relatively good proportion. Like, I was quite surprised. I was like, I thought it'd be a lot higher, to be honest, because of like the primogeniture, and it's the eldest son that inherits. I was expecting it to be the son most of the time. There was quite a lot of times when it was actually the grandson and everything, and I was really surprised by that. In terms of Black Butler, this means that it is historically accurate that the real CL inherited the earldom from his father, although the real CL only held the earldom for around a year or less. It was somewhere around there before he also died. Yeah, and then the other CL, who is the main character of Black Butler, he inherited the earldom from his brother, which happens in 15% of cases where a brother inherits it from a brother. So it's not exactly high, but it's not completely historically inaccurate. So if we get a lot of stuff that's quite low percentages, it will just build up to being more and more likely that it's not very historically accurate. That's what I think. To have 2 earls die in a very short period, I thought was very strange. So to have Vincent Phantom Hive, that was their father, and then the real CL die, I thought that was oh god, that would be really weird. However, I did find some actual examples within a historical context of several earls dying very short periods after each other. In 1885, Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury, died, and in the next year his son, also called Anthony, the 9th Earl of Shaftesbury, also died. So it went between quite a lot of people in a very short period of time. In 1859, 2 Earls of Jersey died within the same year. A little bit after the 1800s, in 1911, George James Howard, the 9th Earl of Carlsbury, died, and then the next year his son, Charles James Stanley Howard, the 10th Earl, died. Yeah, so there are quite a couple of examples of where several earls for the same earldom died within several years of each other, basically. It's completely possible it could have happened. So I would give that a tick at least. I would also argue that it'd be quite a common thing to have several earls die within the same period, because in the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a tuberculosis epidemic across Europe and North America. It was calculated that between 70 and 90% of the European urban populations were infected, and the disease had an 80% death rate, which is going to cause a lot of fucking deaths. So if Black Butler wanted to be more historically accurate, the real CL and his parents could have actually died from the disease, on a visit to London, because they seem to go to London quite a lot. I mean, other CL seems to go to London quite a lot. I don't understand how he hasn't got tuberculosis there yet. It doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, because in general cities, especially London, 40% of their mortality at the time was due to tuberculosis epidemics. So it does make sense that he would likely have got ill when he was there. My next data is on whether the Earl was the second son, as the other CL is the second son of his family. 71% of the Earls were first sons. So from a mathematical point of view, it is unlikely that the other CL would have inherited his earldom. It isn't historically inaccurate though, because there are quite a few other situations where a second son has inherited from his father. In cases like that, it's been the first son has died before the father has died, or the first son's never had a child, and so then it's gone to the second son. A point I'd also like to make is that I was very surprised to find there were third and fourth sons that also inherited earldoms at points, due to the older brothers not having children, or just simply they just stayed unmarried the whole time. Yeah, there was a surprising number of people that didn't get married at all. Out of all the cases, there's 7 cases of third and fourth sons inheriting, which I thought was quite a large number. I mean, we're looking at a lot of people, but that is quite a large number of people. I would have only expected 2 or 3 basically. So I'm now going to discuss the average number of children that every Earl had. The highest group was 23% for 0 children, which I was very surprised by. Most earldoms seem to have at least 1 Earl that had no children. A reason I thought why they might be not having as many children is because the second, third and fourth sons didn't expect to inherit the land, so they were basically looking into careers of the church instead. That was often a place they went if they weren't going to get the earldom. However, I found only 5 of the 20 Earls within this group are second or more sons, which raises a lot of questions about why the firstborn sons were also not having any kids. The lack of children from firstborn sons correlates with the real CL, who died before he was at the age to reproduce. However, when I actually looked at the firstborn sons in the Earls, a lot of them had died at the age of 80. Age wasn't a factor to why they weren't having kids. If we also look at other CL, it kind of matches up with him as well, because he's got no children at the moment. He's also only 13 years old in the manga. He does have a fiancée though, who's his cousin Elizabeth, so it's quite possible that in the future you could have children. I thought it would be interesting also to compare this data against both of the CL's father, Vincent, and I decided to look at the second and third highest groups, because obviously he had more than 0, because he had 2. So I wanted to see what was the next highest groups, what would be most likely after 0, how many kids he would have. And the most popular number of children for Earls to have, besides 0, was 3 and 4. I would really argue that the CLs should have had more siblings because of this average. They should have had more than 4, because a lot of Victorian nobility at the time had children every 1 or 2 years, especially in happy marriages. CL's parents are described as being in love with each other, and they're shown to be very in love. So they are in a happy marriage. And even their marriage was in 1874. Then the twins were born in 1875. So it does suggest they were fertile enough to have kids, because that was the normal trait where you have kids quite soon after you've been married, especially if you're at that age to have kids. To produce twins as well suggests that Rachel was very fertile, so she definitely should have had slightly more than the average children. Both CLs were 11 years old at the time of their death, so I think it would be more realistic if they had 2 or 5 other children. It completely makes sense, I think. If we even go on conservative estimate, they had kids every 2 years, and they have 11 years of life. Then there's 5, you can get 5 more kids out of that basically. It just doesn't make sense why they don't have more kids. I'm guessing they just didn't want to add more kids and explain why they died, and try and make other CL sound like he was all alone. But I don't know, you could have just had a massive tuberculosis outbreak in the house, and then they could have all died of tuberculosis. I think that would have been really good. Historically speaking, having a massive tuberculosis outbreak in a whole of a household would have been interesting. in my research, actually, when I was looking at it, I actually found the Earl of Denbigh, William Fielding, had twins in 1823, and I was really pleased. I found someone who had twins around the same period. I mean, it was like 50 years beforehand, but you know. So, and these were actually their firstborn children. So his firstborn son, Rudolph, his first daughter, Mary, were both twins. And then he went on to have like a total of 11 children across 20 years of marriage. So it was completely possible that they could have had 2 to 5 children in like 11 years. Each child they had 1 to 4 years between them. So they didn't have them every single year. William Coutts Keppel, 7th Earl of Albemarle, or similarly had a very big family of 10 children. Each of his children were born between 1 and 2 years to the previous, which kind of suggests, like, you know, you can be this fertile. You know, Vincent like literally had 11 years of marriage with Rachel. They were in love with each other. Rachel was fertile. They were both young. It doesn't make sense why they wouldn't have had more children before they died. I mean, the real Ciel seems a psychopath. The other Ciel is very ill all the time. It would make sense to have more kids. You know, you don't want a psychopath running your earldom. He doesn't even seem interested in being an earl. It doesn't make sense why you wouldn't try and have more kids to try and like, because it's obvious that the real Ciel isn't gonna do very well in that earldom. He's likely not gonna have any kids because he doesn't care about the earldom. The other Ciel is Ig. He's gonna die before the real Ciel. If this was realistic. So they would have more kids to bloody make sure that they have some more sons to be heirs. You know? Yes, it doesn't make sense. I would argue, the only reason I might possibly argue that they might not have more kids is because Rachel has asthma, and the research I did into asthma suggests that during pregnancy it can lead to high blood pressure, signs of damage to another organ such as the kidneys, restricted fetal growth, and premature birth. However, I don't know how likely it is she would actually know of these risks because they were in Victorian times. In the Victorian period, there was an increase in medical knowledge, and John Snow developed the germ theory in 1849, which is before the kids were born in 1875. And he even did some follow-up research in 1854 during a cholera outbreak. However, Snow's germ theory was generally dismissed. In 1870s, Joseph Lister developed on the germ theory, arguing that there was need for sanitation in hospitals. Yet that wasn't generally accepted until 1890s. So it doesn't make sense why they wouldn't. They might have listened to the advice, but I just generally think there's too many questions involved with this. Why didn't they have more kids? Like, it doesn't make sense at all. Like, the major problem we have with Black Butler is that they don't develop their characters enough. They don't develop their world enough. And so this just causes issues when you're trying to ask actual questions about the whole thing. I mean, they have started developing the character of Other Ciel, but like they're 25 volumes in. Like, I don't understand. They tell you like a backstory of each of the characters, be like, oh yes, this is their backstory, and then they never go back to their character. They don't develop on it ever. Like, Sebastian's never developed on. Other Ciel every now and then gets ill, which doesn't really make any sense because he's not meant to be getting ill, because he made a pact with Sebastian to make sure he wouldn't get ill, and it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes he has mental breakdowns, and then you're confused, and it's just stupid. Anyway, we're gonna look at names for the next bit, and just look at like the family names, and I want to see it's starting to basically look like there's a lot of room for improvement with historical accuracy within the Black Butler and how they talk about the Ciels. Anyway, you have a good day. Take care. Enjoy Pride Month. Bye!